Well, go-kart is looking way different. Yeah, well, that motor I had on there, I think it was 11 horse. Here's the piece of shit. Keep the light on it. This shaft, if you remember before, used a grinder and I grinded it down. But this is a different shaft because on the other side the cone is a little bit longer and it still takes some nut, but it fits a thicker flywheel. It has a longer stroke to it, so I would have had the piston's all the way up, but I would have had to shave off the top of it and on the side here, and I just don't have the time for it in this build, so I'll probably end up using this motor for something else. Just like it says on it, nothing but trouble. Freaking hate this thing so much. Starter's a piece of shit. Where the bolts went in for the starter, they're stripped, so I may not even use this motor. The oil that I kept putting in was freaking brand new, and every time I put it in here, it turned green. You can't really tell, but there's still some oil on that gear right there, and it's all freaking green. I don't get it. Yeah, so it's in a box, and hopefully it'll just stay there. And yeah, so I came across an amazing deal. For $100, I got this 87 Kawasaki Ninja ZX600. It has a GPZ motor or something like that. I don't know too much about motorcycles. I know how to do the clutch, whatnot. Carburetors are a pain in the ass. I took a small gas tank just to get started. I had the fuel line. In between the two middle carburetors is a 4-cylinder, so one carburetor per cylinder. In between there's a T and it goes to all 4. This is the feed line, and off every cylinder there are these vacuum lines. One I think is capped off, and this one was supposed to go to the fuel pump, but I only have one going to the fuel pump, and I think that's my problem for running it. It runs okay. It redlines at 11 grand, and I've seen to get it up to 7 so far, and all my little tinkering and whatnot, so I'll have to figure it out. It also came with a spare motor, as you saw on the go-kart. This is a spare motor. I guess this one's better than that one, but I don't think the clutch is in there because this thing just flops back and forth. So if I was to use this motor per se, I'd have to do a clutch, and then where is it? Somewhere on top of here there's the little, back in here under the gas tank there's a vent hole and there's some rust in it, so I don't know about that. This one sat out in the weather or something. I can't even tell if it cranks over. I have to take this off to be able to turn it over. Yeah, it's got the sprocket on the back. I have to cut my frame on my go-kart in front of the axle. I'm going to extend it about 15 inches, so I'll have a lot of room back here. Somehow I'm going to mount the radiator on here. Radiator might go right here just because it's good supports on here. The gas tank is sadly coming off. I did a pretty good job on it too, but I need something bigger for the bigger motor. That little tank I had on there, every time I fired it up I'd empty it. That's only like 3/4 of a gallon. So after I extend the frame, I'm cutting out that engine mount, basically cutting out everything in the middle there, starting over. It also came with spare engine mounts. This was pretty freaking sweet. So these puppies go in there something like that, and then they bolt onto the motor. So I can use this and make a mount just for this and freaking weld it right to my frame, and then be able to take the motor, put it right in there, just like a bike pretty much. You can replace the motor, take it out, do whatever. The headers on this thing, this one doesn't have the exhaust on it, but they come down and they go basically straight under the motor. Guy on YouTube, Jez96, something like that. I'm not quite sure how to sound out that name. He's doing a similar build with Doom Buggy in a way. He has the suspension in the back, in the front, and he built up his whole frame. He built engine mounts for his, and then on the exhaust, it's got the little ears that go around here, and you can cut them down low and you can turn them. So I'd like to try to get that exhaust up and try to get it along this side, just have it kind of go out somewhere around this bar. The roll cage, gonna get cut right here, and I'll just extend it straight back the same amount as I will down here. So basically this whole thing's just gonna get stretched. The axle's gonna go further back. I gotta do a lot of measuring just to make sure it's all gonna work and have enough room. Also, the seat is gonna come back a little bit because this is go-kart's made for like 12-year-olds or something, and they're only like 5'5" or something. I'm 6 foot and I have a tough time fitting in this thing, especially jumping in and out when the engine isn't running good. It gets irritating. So I'm gonna move the whole seat back somewhere around like 5 inches or so. So this length I'm talking about 15, could be more like 17, 18, whatever. Jezza 96, his dune buggy, he did like a whole frame. He built the whole frame. It's all squared and triangles and everything. It's wicked stiff. I'm not going to do a suspension on this one, but to stiffen up the frame with this being longer, and I want to make it all look good, so I'm really going to take my time. I have another go-kart. I'm just going to use the bars off it. So if I move the camera back, right here, this part of the frame, it's going to go somewhere back there. So there's going to be this long flat spot, and this motor puts out somewhere around 75 horsepower. So this whole thing is just going to frickin' twist back and forth every time you stomp on it or downshift. So where this roll cage bar is, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to put all new bolts in so they're all good, not worn. I'm going to take a bar straight from here. I'm going to go right down, right where this rail would be back here. So it's going to be completely braced for that. So I think that's going to help out a lot. I might do another smaller one, kind of parallel to it or something. Yeah. Also, if I move back the seat, you're going to be sitting right next to this bar. I may have to move the roll cage back and extend this part. So when I move it back, I'll be able to move the seat back, and the seat will still be in the same position as it is here. This is fine on the sides. I kind of like that. I like having this pipe on the side, but I'll have to cut it and I'll have to extend it too. And it's quite a project. All the tires on it are flat. A while ago I welded the tire right to the shaft, but it's just right here. So it's going to take a day freaking grinding all this. And then the threads on here don't look bad. The nut was welded on the inside, but I think the threads are salvageable. The front tires are on the stock rims, so that's not a big deal. And I'll probably end up just tubing those because those have a good tread to them, not too much weather cracking. It's just around the bead or something. It's not a big deal. These are lawnmower tires from the front end. These tires in the back, I did a burnout with my go-kart, and this was when it had the decumps on here, and there's a bunch of burn lines down it, and I just don't know how good they're going to stay on the bead when you have this kind of motor with so much weight and going into a drift, and all that force is going to be just pushing on the side of that tire. So I'll probably do a different tire. I'm not quite sure. I got to put the stock rims back on here. That was a bad decision. Worst comes to worst, I could buy myself a new axle. I wouldn't think it would cost too much, but it's possible. For the sprocket, a lot of you are probably wondering this, so I'll have to walk over to the bike in a second. This sprocket takes a much bigger chain. I don't know the exact specifications of what size, what teeth, or whatever. All those questions I usually get. But much bigger chain than the one that was on here. If you can see the teeth down here, yeah, you can see them in the light. They're pretty small. They took a chain this size. I don't know. Put my hand next to it, you can see how big they are. They're not awfully big, but much bigger than a bicycle chain. But the chain on this thing is just huge. Try to get a good angle on here. Yeah, right where it's on the sprocket. Come on, camera. But it's not quite bright enough in here. Here's a side angle right here. It's just monstrous, wicked wide. So this chain's gonna be definitely gonna hold the torque of that engine on that go-kart. And the sprocket, cannot see, but there's 6 bolts that hold it on, similar to this brake disc right here. There's 2 bolts here, another one here, and then all the way around. These 6 bolts on that sprocket on the back are exactly the same on my go-kart, surprisingly. Except for my go-kart takes a smaller bolt. This one takes a little bit larger, so I might have to just drill out the threads in this one and just have a nut on the other side and a larger bolt. Front end on this thing, I don't think I'll do too much. I might just swap the tie rod ends because they're not really worn at all. But right here, a little bit of play. Then the steering wheel, it freaking moves. It's kind of hard to steer, but it's also not moving. It has a solid axle in the back, so it's always pushing you straight, and these tires are always dragging when you're in a turn. The electrical on this thing, I'll probably end up just taking it all off and extending all the wires. It has tachometer, speedo, gas, temperature. I think the only 2 I'll be able to use would be the tach and the temperature. The speedo would be